All right, at this point, you guys have finished your quizzes. You have attempted to answer these 10 questions, 10 different citations from the Raven, and you are trying to identify their Gothic elements. There are actually a lot of different answers for these questions, which is why they were open ended. And there's actually a ton more than just 10. You could go line by line and really pull out the Gothic elements. So, the Gothic chart looks like this. And I started to fill it in, and then I was like, wait a minute, you guys probably should see me filling this in. So, first of all, there's no textual evidence to support that that he's in a castle or a bizarre structure. Okay, so there's no cited evidence, which means there's no impact on anything. There was a section in lines 13 and 14 where it says, and the silken, sad, uncertain rustling of each purple curtain thrilled me, filled me with fantastic terrors never felt before. So the impact of this, the character is terrified, but is filled fantastically, which seems like a good thing. This impacts the reader because we are left to wonder how the terror is a good thing. Okay. At one point, the bird shows up, right? And it's described as ghastly, grim, and ancient. Okay. So if something is ghastly, it's disgusting. And if it's ancient, I know there's a typo. If it's ancient, it's old. The description of the raven makes the reader feel like the man is being told, like, how do I say, like a man, like the like a wise old man is about to give some ancient advice to the man. Makes the reader eager to hear what's coming. Just in case you wanted to, there's a couple of other examples of something that adds mystery and suspense. So the fact that there's rapping, tapping at my chamber door, which was noticed, you would have noticed that in the Ed puzzle, that is also leading to the mystery and the suspense. The author just could have said rapping, but they said rapping, tapping, rapping, tapping at my chamber door. And it's very repetitive, and that repetitive makes you kind of feel the mystery. Here I opened wide the door, darkness there and nothing more. So he thought somebody was knocking at the door, but when he opened it, there's nobody there. Mystery. Okay. So the image, in that case, you would explain the impact, the image of opening a door into a hallway that's dark with no one there adds suspense. Okay. So there is actually an ancient prophecy, and that's in line 91. He says, prophet, said I, thing of evil, prophet still, if bird or devil. And so that's obviously an ancient prophecy. Okay. Prior to this line, the narrator saw the bird as friendly and curious and gentlemanly. However, at this point, his relationship to the bird totally changes and it becomes more threatening and ominous, and he sees the bird as devil. Okay. Number 4, omens, portents, and visions. We have this section where, remember, an omen or a portent is a sign or a warning that something bad is about to happen. So the character, it says, deep into that darkness peering, long I stood there, wondering, fearing, doubting, dreaming dreams no mortal ever dreamed to dream before. So you could say that this dream he's dreaming, to me, it sounds like a daydream, like his eyes are open and he's standing at the door peering into nothing. And he's dreaming a dream that no one ever dreams. So it's definitely a bad feeling. So when you're explaining the impact, you want to be descriptive. So The words, the fact that he's standing and staring into a dark hallway and almost daydreaming makes us realize that the daydreaming something no mortal wants to dream makes us realize that the dream is a bad warning of something to come. Okay. So I think there's lots of supernatural, otherwise inexplicable events. Here I opened wide the door, darkness there, and nothing more. You could say at that point, you don't know what's happening. And you could be like, huh, that's inexplainable. Somebody was there and now they're not. And this adds to the mystery and suspense, right? I don't know why it's yellow. Ooh, well, who cares? The fact that no one is standing at the door can be considered supernatural because there was a knock. Now, we know later on that the knock is really from the window, but you can still explain at this point the impact, right? And then, quoth the raven. The raven says out loud, nevermore. Now, I don't know about you, but a bird can't talk. So this is an otherwise inexplicable or supernatural event. Birds can't speak. So I always say so. It's not a good way to start a sentence, y'all. Birds can't speak. Therefore, the fact that the bird is quoted as saying nevermore is a supernatural event. Now remember, the reason why we're doing all of this is because I'm telling you that the Raven is a piece of Gothic literature. And if I have to prove that the Raven is a piece of Gothic literature, then I have to be able to find evidence to suggest that these Gothic elements exist in this play or in this poem. Maybe not all of them, but a lot of them. And that's really what we're doing here. Okay. Another example that I did not point out, but that is there, is fowl whose fiery eyes now burned into my bosom's core. Okay. Fiery eyes can't actually burn into your heart, but that's what it felt like, which is supernatural. Okay. All right. So moving on to element number 6, high and overwrought emotion, which brings on anxiety and panic and fear. The only word there spoken was the whispered word Lenore. This I whispered, and an echo murmured back the word Lenore. It's being echoed back. So either he spoke it loud enough. See, it says he whispered it. If he whispered it, why would there be an echo back? There's only an echo back when you're loud, right? So this is creating a sense of high emotion because he hears someone that's not there. Okay. And so this is what you would explain, right? In your impact statement. You would say, no one is in the hallway. No. So, and the main character heard a voice, heard an echo say, Lenore. This brings on high emotions for him because he knows no one is there. He longs to see or hear from Lenore, whom he loved. Till I scarcely more than muttered, other friends have flown before. On the morrow he will leave me, as my hopes have flown before. Then the bird said, nevermore. He realizes that the bird is never going to leave. The bird is never going to leave him. Much like his despair and his heartache will never leave him. This brings on crazy emotions, and the reader senses sadness. Okay. There's a few more that I did not mention, right? All my soul within me burning. This is an explanation of how his soul is burning. Be that word, our sign is parting. Bird or fiend, I shrieked upstarting. If somebody is shrieking, they're mad, they're angry, right? So you should be able to tell that there's a lot of emotion going on. There really isn't a woman in distress. There's not a woman character who's alive who's needs help being saved. Okay, we skip that one. Mystery of gloom and horror. What imagery is added that makes the story more frightening? Okay, so we have, let me actually, no, I'm not going to rearrange this. So take thy beak from out my heart and take thy form from out my door. This can be, you can break this down into two different into one sorry you can explain this has a lot to do with the theme, right? Because he's talking to a bird that can't talk back, it's clear there's something wrong with his head, proving the theme. Loneliness can cause insanity because we're socially isolated. Wow, what a crazy theme statement. I haven't really read that since last year, and it has so much to do with our quarantine situation. But other really simple metonymy of gloom and horror has to do with little things like at the very beginning, he says it was a bleak December. We know December's in the winter. December is cold. Things are dying. Even the ground is hard. The sun doesn't pop up as much. It's gloomy, right? Um, and so that can be explained. You can explain the impact of the setting of it being bleak in December. Poe also describes the raven as an ebony bird, ebony meaning black. You see, it has a lot to do with death. This bird, this raven, they're large birds. They feed on dead animals. Ew. So everything about that is creepy and it adds to the gloom and the horror. Okay. There are a few romantic elements. I only mentioned one in the quizzes, which is the sorrow for the lost Lenore. Lenore is dead, Lenore is gone, and that means that there's an unreturned love. It's not shared by both partners because one doesn't exist anymore, right? So the narrator wants to hold her again. She has to come back for him to do so, but the raven says, no, nevermore. In other words, he will never see her again. Okay, so a different theme that you could come up with, like a moral of the story: death is final and can't be reversed. You can explain that because he is so sorrowful for his lost Lenore. Okay. Technically, the lovers have been parted. They've been separated for some reason. They're separated by death. In the very beginning, in lines 10, 11, and 12, you see, from my books, surcease of sorrow, sorrow for the lost Lenore, for the rare and radiant maiden whom the angels name Lenore, nameless here forevermore. So you can tell that they're no longer together. There is no bad guy trying to love Lenore. There is no other rival lover. Oh gosh, I didn't mention this in my slideshow. It's probably a good one. And the unreliable narrator, I guess some teachers teach as a Gothic element, which means that you can't trust the narrator to present a story accurately. He said he's sad and depressed from the very beginning. And when you're sad and depressed and kind of having a rough time, sometimes you're not really as trustworthy. Eagerly I wished for morrow. Vainly I had sought to borrow from my book Surcease of Sorrow. That's an example. His first move after the bird flies in to ask his name is not normal. Okay. That's not really, you would not say, tell me what thy lordly name is. If a bird comes to your door, you're not like, yo, Raven, what's your name? This makes him kind of unreliable. Like, is he crazy? Is he talking to birds? So this is an example of a Gothic element. I'm not going to focus too much on it, but for those of you who want to know that, excuse me, that's definitely another one. So the reason we went over this is just to give you an idea of where how to categorize those pieces of textual evidence from the quizzes. And you know what? Sometimes what I love about English and not math is that you can kind of argue. You could say that some of these are also mysterious and suspenseful. You could probably say that some of these, like ghastly, grim, and ancient raven, you could totally argue that that is an example of a metonymy of gloom and horror. So not all of these answers are objective or subjective. There's not just one answer. It can be based on how you explain it. Okay. So keep that in mind when you go forward and you start creating your own chart, filling in your own chart for your story. There's not just one right answer. It's about how you explain it. So let that be something that kind of helps you kind of take the pressure off. Okay. Let me know if you have any questions about this character chart, about how to identify um, these Gothic elements. And if you have any questions, a lot of students will struggle when it comes to explaining the impact. Okay, so come back to this chart, come back to this video, and come back and realize how I'm explaining it and how I typed it out. And you want to model yours after mine. Okay, let me know how else I can help.